Sam Parr, welcome to Built to Sell Radio.
What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good, man. Tell me a little bit about the hustle. So I know a lot of people know about the hustle and know of you, but for folks who don't know your story, I want to go back to the beginning and HustleCon and your first original idea for the conference. Maybe walk us through that.
Yeah, the hustle nowadays is different than how it started. So now it's like a full-blown media company. There's probably, I don't know exactly how many people work there now, but it's in the range of 100.
Wow.
And it's read by close to 3 million people a day. So the hustle is, we're best known for our daily email. So we have a daily email that has a team of journalists that covers all the important tech and business news that you need to know each day. And that has maybe 2.8, 2.9. So we'll round up to 3 million subscribers with like a 50% open rate. So a lot of people are reading every day. And then we have a handful of podcasts. A couple of them are quite popular. I'm the host of one of them called My First Million, and that's fairly popular. It's one of the most popular business podcasts in the world. We own 𝙁𝙊𝙇𝙊𝙁, which is a really popular subscription service where people sign up and they get all types of like interesting business breakdowns as well as a paid community. And then we used to host lots of events. COVID ruined it, and then we just never went back and did it. And so we used to host events with like many, many thousands of attendees. And then, so it kind of became a full-blown media company. The way it started is I was going to start a company, and I just sold one thing, and I didn't make life-changing money, but I made enough money that I didn't have to work for like a year or something like that. And I was like, well, I better figure out what I'm going to start. And so I hosted this event called HustleCon, which was basically like a TED Talk for entrepreneurs. And I was like, I'll just meet someone at this event that I'm going to host and partner with them or get some idea. And I hosted this event. It made like 60 grand in like six weeks or something like that. And I made the event popular by blogging and creating a newsletter. And then I took the money and I went and rode my motorcycle around the country. And then I was like, I'll do this thing again. And I did it again, and it made 150,000 or something like that. And I was like, okay, there's growth here. I'm not going to be a conference guy though. I don't like this business because like if it rains, you're screwed. That's weird. That's not good. But what else is there? And I was like, well, I was good at this content thing, and I did a bunch of research, and I realized, well, there's definitely like room in the market for like an email newsletter, even though there's not that many people doing it. I think I could pull this off, and I think I could make this into a huge company. My goal was 100 million in revenue. I was like, the math shows me that I think I could pull this off, even though there's not that many people doing it. And so in 2016, I launched the hustle as it is now.
But there were so many other media companies covering entrepreneurship. I mean, Inc.com, as an example of like one of 1,000 different media companies that was trying to chronicle the entrepreneurial story and share insights about this. How do you take on like a 30-year incumbent as a startup? That blows my mind because Inc. was out there doing it, right? And had been trying.
Yeah, but I thought they were horrible.
And what is it about what they were doing that you thought I can do better?
I just thought it was lame. I just thought that it was, it's kind of like, it's just like art. Like maybe that art appeals to a certain demographic, but it certainly didn't appeal to me. And when we launched, people talked about our voice. And at the time, our voice was like funny, very blunt. We would make fun of people. We would make fun of ourselves. We were very irreverent. We just wrote like we talked. And I feel like Inc. didn't do that. And they were hard to trust because they were so almost corporate. And so I just thought that there was room in the market. Additionally, the business model that Inc. and Forbes and pretty much any digital company, what they were doing is they would hire all these writers and then make them like write a bunch of articles and then get a bunch of traffic and make money via ads. And I was like, I think that business model is really bad because they're just building up their Facebook pages and posting articles there for traffic, and Zuck's changing that model. So if you have 1 million people on your Facebook page, originally maybe 20% or 50% of them would see your articles. And over time, it just got lower and lower and lower to where you would post something and only 4% of people would see your articles. And I was like, I don't think that business model is sustainable. But I bet you with 2 or 3 writers, I can reach. So the hustle right now basically has, there was a 6-month period where we had basically 2 writers. Now we have like 3. Or maybe they actually have more now because they have built-in redundancy. But very realistically, 1 or 2 people could write The Hustle and reach, 90 million people a month. And of course, you wouldn't be able to like take vacations. And if someone got sick, it would be a big deal. And so that's why we have redundancy. But like there was a time where we've had, because we were short staffed, 1 or 2 people for months at a time writing it, and it was making, a couple $1 million a month in revenue. So like now the economics are such that like 1 or 2 or 3 writers can make the same amount of revenue as like 100. And so I realized that business model was far more interesting. And also I could make money through advertising in the newsletter, just like a normal media company, but I could make other products and sell it to my list, because the way that I described it is my list was like my pirate ship, and every subscriber is just like a little bit more wind in my sails, because it's not like I'm reliant on Zuckerberg. If he changes something, it doesn't impact me that much. And so it was the content, but it was also the business model and the business strategy.
I want to talk more about the content for a second, because you characterized it as irreverent, fun. You made fun of people and of yourself and so forth. I'm guessing that's your personality coming through. My understanding is
Yes.
You did a lot of the original writing before hiring folks. Like you were part of.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you codify that writing style so that other people could emulate that voice without you having to kind of edit every word they said?
So that's pretty easy. And a lot of people early on were like, well, this business won't scale beyond you. And they were totally wrong. You just have to do a good job of hiring. And so, first of all, you have to hire people who are like kind of experts. Like they don't have to be entirely like business experts, but they have to like know about like what's interesting and what's not interesting and have good taste. And so to find people with good taste, that's challenging. That's the hard part. And you find people with good taste by just asking them what they read on a regular basis, who they follow online, what they think is funny, what they think is like intriguing. Do they know how to frame a story and like have an interesting part? So like there might be some big story that happens, but like the interesting angle is like kind of hidden. And so do they know how to like frame things? So that's one thing. The actual writing part, it's pretty easy. I could print out 30 days of the Hustle's email, and I could say, for the first week of your work, copy these out word for word by hand. And they would probably, after 30 emails, figure out and know exactly how to write like us. And then we have an editor, our lead editor, who now, I don't even know what his title is, but he basically practically runs the company. His name's 𝙁𝙊𝙐𝙇𝙊𝙐. He would edit it, and he is kind of like the old guy in the room. He's not actually old, but we would hire like a 40 or a 50-year-old who was like making sure the trains were running on time and who had experience in a newsroom. And then every once in a while, or fairly often, we would hire these like young people who didn't have a lot of experience, but they were full of energy, full of insight. They had their fingers on the pulse of internet culture, and then Brad would help edit their work, and that was a really good dynamic.
Makes sense. So take me back to the economic model here. So in the early days, it was a conference business. So you had people pay for tickets, and you had sponsors, and there was money left over at the end if all went well. Was that the basic the economic model we've seen in other conferences?
Yeah, but at first I really barely had. I think in year one I had $0, or maybe I had $5,000 in sponsors, and the rest was tickets. And then year two, it slowly warped into 50-50. But like at first, for the first year, it was like 70-30 or 80-20.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. And then you went to monetizing the list by selling sponsorship, presumably advertising in the email in the emails that went to subscribers. Is that how?
Yeah,
I walk through that.
I don't remember what we averaged, but I was the first writer and the first salesperson basically, and I sold the first set of ads, and I got us to 30,000 in monthly revenue. And I put the original ad at around $25 per 1,000 sends. There was a while where it got above that, $35 or something like that. So What that means is on 1 million sends, you make 35 grand. And then if you send 30 days a month, you're at $900,000 a month, or whatever it is. It was that I actually did the math wrong, but you get the idea.
Yeah,
it's
35,000
times 30 is greater than 900,000.
Yeah. Okay, that's helpful. And so, how are you building your list? What was your most successful tactic to getting new subscribers?
The first 100,000 subscribers, it was through me blogging a lot. And so I would go to Reddit and Hacker News and other forums, and I would see what topics people were interested in. And I would write blog posts about them. And then I would post it in those communities, and they would go viral. And not all of them went viral, but I would write like 1 to 4 articles a day. And some of them would go viral. And so we would do sometimes like really crazy things. For example, I had a friend that was really depressed, and he started microdosing LSD in order to kind of self-medicate. And he like researched it, but of course it's illegal. So, but he like researched it and as a very like medicinal way. Like, you know, studies show that like psilocybin, which I think is in mushrooms, and then like LSD, like it might actually help with alleviate some of my problems. And so I wrote about like, you know, I said, I'm testing. I actually wrote it, but I did it from his perspective where when I interviewed him of like, you know, I'm testing LSD to cure my depression day 1. Here's how it is. And I would like write things like that. Or we would have someone live on Soylent for 30 days and that would go viral. Or like I knew a guy who used to plagiarize authors on Amazon on these book topics like how to sleep with women, and he would post it and make 60 grand a month. And I thought that was horribly unethical and sleazy and everything. And so I wrote a story about it. And so I would write about these like crazy sometimes things, and we would get like 500,000 to 1 million people a month coming to our website right off the bat. And then I had really good pop-ups that said, oh no, not another pop-up. Okay, look, while you're here, this article you're reading, it's about someone doing something crazy. That's not exactly what we do all the time. You see, we are The Hustle. We're a daily newsletter. Sign up, and if you don't like it, I'll send you $1. Or like we would just like have silly like attention grabbing things like that. And you know, that's how we got our first 100 to 200,000 people in the first year or so. And then after that, we created an affiliate program or like a referral program where we would send you stickers and hoodies and things like that if you referred more people. And then we also realized our business model, if we're making $1 a month per subscriber with our advertising business model, and they stay with us for like, you know, a couple of years, we could definitely spend $1.50 or $2 to acquire new customers. And so we started buying advertising on Facebook, in other newsletters and places like that.
And how did you finance the business, the growth, as you started to spend on advertising? I'm assuming that was starting to get that would have gotten expensive at some point.
We were basically profitable. I mean, we were profitable every single year, and we were way cash flow positive every single month. When I started the business, I had $500,000 saved up, and that's what I used. And I had $500,000 saved up from the conferences. Additionally, I raised a little bit of seed funding, and that was one of my biggest regrets, was raising that seed funding, because the day we got that seed funding, I forget what our bank account was, but my bank account never went below that. And so if I was going to raise seed, because I raised a little bit of, it wasn't venture capital, it was just from like wealthy people. Had I done it effectively, I would have been more like, I should have been more aggressive with their money, but I didn't. I almost treated it like a safety net, and that was an error on my part. But I had about 500,000 from the conferences that I made.
And how much did you raise?
About $1 million.
How much equity did you have to give up for that million?
I was the very vast majority when I ended up selling the company.
So you gave away a minority of it, not gave away, you sold a minority to those sort of seed folks. Did they have any sort of...
Yeah, it was like 10%. It was a convertible note. So okay. I don't know. Technically, I'm not selling anything.
Right. Okay. That's helpful. I was going to ask, was it how it was structured? Okay.
It was a convertible note.
Got it. And so if you were advising another founder who was thinking about, you know, the best time to raise money is when you don't need it, you know...
I think the best time to raise and sell is like is sometimes when you don't need it. But at least that's what people say. I could think of a few examples of when that's not true, but it's kind of like dating. It's like the more independent and better off you are, and you don't need like another person, is when all the other people want to be with you.
Yeah. Yet in your case, ultimately, you felt like you kind of regretted it just because you never used the money.
Yeah. So when I started my company, I was like 24, 25, and I was in San Francisco, and all my friends were raising money, and I thought, and it was ego. It was very much ego driven. Now it's more different. Now I'm like wealth driven and like, not power driven, but freedom driven and like fun driven. But then it was significantly more ego driven. And I thought like, well, this is just what people do. And this is what I need to do in order to be accepted by my peers and whatever. And so that was a mistake. That was a costly mistake, but it worked out. So like, I can't say I wouldn't have, like, I don't entirely regret it because I got the desired result.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that occurs to me is that the beginning, it was irreverent, and you wrote these articles that were attention getting in many ways. And sometimes you probably ruffled some feathers. Did that get to you at all?
It didn't get to me too much, but like a lot of people would call me a bro, or they would say like the hustle's like for bro millennials. And what they didn't realize was that there was one point when we started the company where we basically had 6 employees, and virtually all of them but me were women. And not only that, most of them were like women who, if you called someone a bro, they would be like offended. And so whenever someone called me a bro, I would say to them, A, if you're trying to insult me, I think that that's nonsense, because I don't find that to be an insult. Like when you're saying that I like sports and like that, I don't understand what you're trying to say. But if you're trying to, I don't think that that's insulting to be a bro. And number 2, I just don't think you're accurate. I don't think you know the truth. And so I actually was like, but you know what? Screw it. I'm going to give into this because I'm getting the attention, and I'm in the attention business. And so oftentimes I would, kind of play a little bit of wasn't playing a character. Everything I said was authentic to who I really was, but I wouldn't correct people sometimes because I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to let people think that I'm a bro, and I'll do crazy stuff and let them call me bro, and I'll just reap the rewards because they're sharing my stuff. Because the people who share content are often the people who love it, but also the people who are really angry at it. And I was like, whatever, they're putting money in my pocket by sharing this stuff. So I'll dive into that. So I used to get self-conscious of that a little bit, but not too much. I would get self-conscious when people would make fun of my looks. There was a time where I was chubby, and I got really bummed about that. But every once in a while, like if we would sell tickets to a conference or something and people would call me like a fraudster or something like that, I'd be like really offended, because that's, first of all, I was like, dude, I don't even speak at my own event. We're going to go, like, it's like the founder of like WeWork or Casper, like interesting companies, like, but like I don't even speak. So I don't know why you're calling me a fraud. What did I do? But it would bother me. And because the company was named The Hustle, it's kind of a silly name. People would think that I was like scamming them or something. And I'd be like, and then I was like, by the way, we don't even sell anything. It's a daily email. It's free. If you don't like it, just bail. So sometimes that stuff would bother me. But no, I had pretty thick skin most of the time.
Got it. So in terms of the business model, you had the conferences, which again, COVID killed, but it was a 50-50 split. Ticket sales. Yeah,
and when we sold when COVID happened, we were doing 7 figures a year at conferences.
In the conferences alone. Amazing.
Yeah, that could have been an 8-figure business. I screwed it up at first because remember, I started the company when I was 24, 25. So it didn't make sense to me that and I was always self-employed. And when tickets to an event was like $2 or $3 grand, I'd be like, only rich people can do that. And then now I'm like, well, no, $2 grand, that's like what sometimes things cost and companies pay for it. And so I charged way too little, like $200, $300. And so we should have changed. Now that I'm older and like understand how it works, and I send my employees to conferences, and I'm like, oh, $2 grand, this is worth it. You should go. So I actually could have changed it a lot and done really well.
Interesting. So you had the conference business, and you obviously started to monetize the email list as well through sponsorship. Tell me about the genesis around trends, because this sounds like a totally different business.
It's not. And that business could have been huge as well. I screwed that up a little bit. So basically, my whole plan was to build up the newsletter, and as it was approaching 1 million subscribers, to do research on other products that I can launch to them. So an example of this that's not related to us, but is a comparison, which is Thrillist. Thrillist was like a men's focused nightlife newsletter. So if you lived in New York City and you want to know cool stuff, cool stores, whatever, you sign up to Thrillist New York, and they tell you like cool stuff going on throughout the city. Well, they eventually launched a company. I forget what it was called, but they launched a clothing company. It was called Jack Threads. Remember Jack Threads? I don't know if you remember hearing about that.
I don't, but
they bought a clothing company because they're like, wow, our guys like all dress alike, whatever. And they scaled that business to $100 million before they sold it. And I was like, I want to do that, but not with clothing, because that's like a horrible business, or that's just really hard. But let's figure something out. And so I would do I studied Gartner, I studied Forrester research, I studied like some of these B2B information plays, and I started doing research on it. And I would write these papers explaining like how it works and how it applies to us. And I would send it to my friends, and they're like, just sell this, man. This report you're doing is kind of cool. And I was like, what? People would buy that? And they're like, yeah, just do business breakdowns every week, and then have a community where people can discuss it. And that's kind of what Trends was. So Trends is each week you get an email where we like break down interesting companies, but then we also have like a little bit of tech as well as just done manually, where we like find fast growing things like trends, like and we put like graphs in there so you can see how fast it's growing. And so we charge $300 a year for that. And my mistake was that I should have charged $30,000 a year for it.
I'm starting to see a theme here, Sam. My mistake was not charging enough.
It was, yeah, because like, I mean, this is like every second time business owner, I think, like they care about distribution. So like, okay, you have this idea for this widget. How are you going to sell it? And also like charge more and have less customers. And, you know, that's typically a mistake that like a 20-something first time San Francisco person makes, which is not charging enough and going for the masses and not like the niche group.
So you had these individuals who were interested in entrepreneurship subscribe for $300 a year, and they would get a business breakdown each week.
Yeah. And it was like a 2,000 word email. It's crazy good. I read them all the time. I've started companies because of like, and like a lot of people start companies because of it. It's like really fascinating. It's like 1-800-Flowers. They, in their most recent quarterly earnings, they said that millennials are buying succulents like crazy. Like, and we just like covered that, and we're like, wow. And look at this web search or look at Google search for succulents. Like it is growing wild. And then like 3 people started online plant companies. So like we would like do things like that. And it's still around. It's great. I love it. I read it every week. But yeah, that's how it worked. But we should have done like trends reporting for like something that like Nike was gonna like subscribe to or something like that.
Yeah. How were you you were originally writing the trends report?
Oh, dude, the trends was my Skunkworks project. So basically, after work, I created a Gumroad page, which is like tech that helps you sell PDFs, and I wrote out the copy, and I made it so I selected 1,000 people from the Hustle's email. And then I also made it the second after you signed up for the Hustle email. It said, great, you've signed up. You're going to get your email. By the way, we're launching this thing called Trends. You can get early pricing now. And I got like $50,000 in signups and pre-signups doing it. And I wrote all the copy. I did everything. And then all the people who bought, I called them all. And I asked them questions to learn about what they're motivated by, what they care about, why they signed up. And then I wrote the first report just on Google Docs, and I sent it to them. And then I called them again and said, love it or hate it, what can I do better? And then I was like, all right, I think we kind of got it 80% there. And then I hired this woman named Steph Smith, who's now an investor at Andreessen Horowitz, or she's works at Andreessen Horowitz. She kind of took it from like my 50 or 60% to like a really good product. And we launched it. And like on day one, we had like $600,000 or $800,000 in sales. It was pretty good.
Wow. So again, I think a lot of people listening to this are hearing your ability to transfer what you intuitively understand in terms of writing, copywriting, connecting with an audience, and and teaching other people to do that. That is, I think, maybe if I may say, you're underestimating how hard that is for a lot of people. A lot of people find it really hard to basically graft their style. And in your case, you got Steph to take it from, in your own admission, 60% good to now it's even better with her. So like, what's that trend? Like, what's the secret to getting someone like Steph to be able to walk into an idea and make it not just as good as Sam, but even better than what you were writing?
So it's not training them. That's the point. It's finding them. And so what I think I'm probably world class at two things. One, I'm very good at like spotting an opportunity and getting the first $1 million in sales. I can do that in my sleep in a lot of different cases. And then I'm bad at a ton of things, but then the second thing that I'm quite good at is finding talented people and buying their stock way early before the rest of the market knows about it, and then empowering them to be talented and achieve. And so I just read Twitter like crazy if I'm out and I meet someone, and if they post something on LinkedIn on a very regular basis, I just DM someone online and be like, hey, you're interesting. What's your story? And I just do that constantly. And when I find interesting people who fit like a handful, like if they seem driven, typically they're younger, typically they have a chip on their shoulder, like for some reason at our company, we hired, like in our first 10 employees, like 4 of them were lesbians, because like we would hire these young women who like were like, sometimes they would be aggressive or funny, and at previous workplaces they would be called like a bitch, or they would be called, or they like couldn't like be themselves. And I was like, oh dude, I love that. Come on. I love it. We like everyone, and you could totally be you, and so I would love finding these people who felt uncomfortable in other situations, and we would give them, like, they had a chip on their shoulder and they're like, I want to prove to people that I'm great and I've never had an opportunity. I'd be like, hell yeah, I love that about you. I will give you your opportunity. And I did a really good job of setting up lanes for them. And I was like, as long as you stay in those lanes, I want you to let your freak flag fly. That's what I would tell people. I'm like, you could be quirky, you could be weird, you got to get your stuff done on time. If you don't, you're out of here. But as long as we're within those lanes, I don't care about a lot. Just be respectful and kind of your coworkers, and besides that, you're good. And I was pretty good at finding these types of people. So Steph, do you know who Steph Smith is?
I don't, other than you just mentioning her.
If you Google Steph, all right, so I'll give you a few examples. So Steph Smith, if you Google Steph Smith Twitter, you'll see her on Twitter. It looks like she has 130,000 followers on Twitter. She works at A16Z. Before that, she was at my company. Before that, she was just a content marketing individual contributor at some startup. And I found her on Twitter, and I just DM'd her and I said, hey, I love your work. I just read a blog post that you wrote, and like your headline was so good. Can I call you? And she was like, yeah, that's great. Call me. And she had like 2,000 followers on Twitter maybe. And we did really good at spotting her, and we gave her a platform. Another one is 𝙁𝙊𝙇𝙊𝙐𝙇. Do you know who 𝙁𝙊𝙐𝙇 is?
No.
All right, so 𝙁𝙊𝙐𝙇 is this guy who worked for me. So on Twitter, 𝙁𝙁𝙁 now has 600,000 followers. And 𝙁𝙁𝙁 was a research analyst at Kenosha or something like that, which is just like a boring company. Someone introduced me to him, and I got on the phone with him, and he starts yelling. And I'm like, 𝙁𝙁𝙁, man, nice to meet you. I can't, you got to move, you got to speak quietly. And he was like, oh, I'm sorry. And he would keep talking, and he would get so excited that he would start yelling again. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy's like full of energy. I can't even put my ear to the phone, but he's a freak. He's exactly what we need. And so we hired him. Now he's got 600,000 followers on Twitter, and he has like his own brand, and he's like kind of famous. Elon Musk is always commenting on his work on Twitter. And I could probably name a bunch more examples like this where we just got really good at finding intriguing, strong personalities, and we did a really good job of pointing them in the right direction and letting them be free and letting them be themselves. And we did a really good job of finding like almost like misfits, because I love like these types of people, and we did a great job of just kind of creating an us versus them mentality and empowering them.
How did you do that without undermining your ability to sell advertising? Because if you let people run their freak flag or whatever, you fly your freak flag, eventually someone's going to piss off an advertiser. Like, did you tell them?
I pissed off the advertisers the most. So,
so how did you handle that?
Well, first of all, at the company, I think we screwed that up sometimes. Sometimes we bowed down to advertisers, and we only bowed down to advertisers for one reason, which was I didn't care about the money. What I cared about was Katie, who was one of my salespeople. She sold $1 million deal, and I had no problem blowing it by saying something stupid, but I would feel bad that I took money out of her pocket because her commission is now going to go away. So that was the only part that bothered me. But like Goldman, Goldman owned some bank or something, a product called Marcus.
Yeah.
And they wanted to advertise with us, and it's a cool product. But we wrote a story about Fuck Jerry. Fuck Jerry is like an Instagram handle. It's like a media company. And we decided to use the F word in every single sentence because I don't remember why, but for some reason it was funny. And Goldman like pulled out, and we're like, all right, fine, bye. And they ended up coming back to us, so it worked out fine. But I was the motto that we tried to have, which was like be nice, don't be rude, don't curse or be disgusting just for the sake of being disgusting. Like don't and you could be funny and also smart and professional and also not like we didn't like I wasn't crude, and we didn't make fun of someone for like things that are out of their control, like someone's race or gender or age, like, and we weren't hateful at all, but we'd be silly. So for example, SoFi, their president got in trouble for like doing something really dumb, and the headline was SoFi, more like so fucked. And like we would do like silly things like that, and most of the times an advertiser was cool with it. But if they weren't cool with it, our methodology or the way we thought about it was, but like it's going to make our audience more engaged, and that just means we'll get more advertisers somewhere else. Like they'll come to us because they're going to get results to us. They care about results more than they do their principles. At least that's kind of what we thought. And
go ahead.
But we weren't like hateful. Like I never did anything. I don't think I've ever done anything that I was embarrassed of, or at least if I was embarrassed, it wasn't to the embarrassed of like maybe I wrote an article saying I think 𝙁𝙊𝙐𝙇𝙊𝙒 was the real deal, and that the people hating on her were full of it. So like I'm embarrassed that like I got that call wrong, but I there's nothing that I've ever done where it's like I'm ashamed.
Right. Some people listening to this are in the process of trying to get their business to run without them. And the way they're doing that is they're promoting maybe a president or a general manager, trying to get them to take on some of the responsibility of the company. And one of the trepidations they have in that process is becoming beholden to that employee, or becoming overly dependent on that employee, so the employee can take them hostage, asking for increased salary and so forth. And I'm wondering, in your case, you talked about Steph. Now she's got a couple 100,000 followers on Twitter. The other individual I've written down here, Trung. 600,000. Did you let them promote their own personal Twitter handles on The Hustle? And to what extent, if you did that undermine your leverage with them as writers?
I did let them do that, but they weren't allowed to like if they had blogs on the side, I'd be like, no guys, that ain't happening. And so I was like really cool about and progressive about like promoting them and making them like their own, like making them popular and sharing each other's stuff. But you're not going to go and be a contributor somewhere else. Or like I had like I said, good lanes. So like what I thought were very fair lanes, but if you cross that, that's a warning. And if you cross it again, you're out. And I did not, I was quite strict with those things, and everyone knew it. And so I would get afraid of relying on one person. So I tried to do a really good job of building up my bench. So I always had people.
And crossing the lines would have been cross-promoting another piece written on a different platform, promoting.
Like if you're, so what I told them, I go, look, I'm going to make you famous and popular because it's going to help. I'm doing it selfishly because so it's like, you're going to work at my company and you're going to give me something and I'm going to give you something. And we're both going to get value out of this. The value that I'm going to get is that you're going to work for me and you're going to like be writing this newsletter. I'm also going to promote you and make you popular because the more popular you get, the more popular my brand is going to get. And so in exchange, you're going to get popular. And ultimately, after 4 or 5 years, you're going to be able to quit and probably do your own thing. But while you're here with me, you're here to give me value. And in exchange, I'm going to give you value. Here's our rules. It's a mutually beneficial agreement. If any of us breaks these rules, though, this contract is done. You know what I'm saying? So I was like pretty straightforward about this. I'd be like, look, I'm doing this. I'm being selfish, and I expect you to be selfish. You don't screw me, and I don't screw you. But if either of us do, then this agreement, we're going to have an issue.
How did you handle non-competes?
I'm pretty sure in California, non-competes aren't a thing.
They're illegal, or they don't really have any teeth in California.
Yeah, I was in California, and so I didn't care about non-competes. But we have at-will employment. So if I hear that you're crossing the line, you're out. And I would fire people a lot. I mean, I had this pirate ship mentality, which is like, if you're on board and you promote the company, you get promoted and we all help each other. But if you're not, you're out right away. Like there is no medium. And so I was pretty ruthless about that.
How big did you get this company? Because it had, again, the Hustle newsletter, you had the conferences, you had trends. Top line, where were you guys at when you decided to sell?
Well, we sold in the beginning of the year, but we probably would have done $20 million.
Wow.
Our competitor, Morning Brew, was 1 year above us. They had started 1 year before us, and I'm great friends with those guys now. And they did 75 million in revenue this past year and have a chance of getting into the 9-figure range. And I believe our businesses were almost identical in terms of like what the revenue was going to be. So I feel like this definitely could have been a $100 million a year business. I sold early though, and I know I sold early, but I wanted to do it.
I want to get into that. So future, you thought pretty good shot at getting to 20, trailing 12. Where would you have been at ballpark if you were looking historically over the last 12 months?
North of 10. I don't remember exactly. 13, 14, 12. So between 12 and 15. I don't remember exactly.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. And did you have any sense of what it might be worth? Were you starting to kind of get a sense before HubSpot approached you and you're growing this thing? Are you starting to get benchmarks or any sort of comps on what you think it might be worth?
Yeah, I thought 2 to 5 revenue is about what there were. The problem was most of the time media companies buy media companies, and I hated that. I didn't want to sell it to that because I hated media companies. Like most of them I thought were poorly operated or had a certain bias or hired a certain person who I didn't want to be around, and were bad businesses whose stock I didn't want to own. And I always thought that like a WeWork or a LinkedIn or something like that should buy us. But I never thought anyone would be brave enough to do that. And I thought Salesforce maybe. I was like, Salesforce should buy us. And then HubSpot came hollering at me. And I was like, finally, you guys get it. This is exactly what we should do. And that was a very smart move on both of our parts, I think.
Got so many questions there. What was it about brands like LinkedIn or Salesforce that you like? What were you thinking? Because you're right. Mostly media deals are bought and sold between other media companies. Why did you think a brand would be better off owning the Hustle?
Because I saw how bad these brands were at building audiences. They typically aren't good at that, and they're bad. And at a really big company of 3,000 to 5,000 people, it's like impossible or really hard to start a content play as the company's going. And I also saw how much traffic we would drive certain products, and I'm like if a WeWork owned the Hustle, like they would sell so many desks or so much space, or like LinkedIn. I was like, I don't actually know what LinkedIn would sell, but like maybe executive recruiting, but like anything that had like a higher ticket item that was for professionals. I was like, they should just own us and they could just not buy ads anymore and a bunch of other places.
But doesn't that dilute the brand? I mean, that would have been, if you go back to the old days when magazines or newspapers, and if General Motors had bought, I don't know, Men's Health magazine, all of a sudden among readers of Men's Health magazine, the magazine starts to decay because the brand is owned by a giant motor company. Like, isn't
well, just so you know, GM, I believe it's GM. I'm screwing up a lot of my words here, but I believe GM did own ABC, by the way, or one of the car conglomerates owned ABC and like CBS and things like this. I'm talking about in the like 70s and 80s and things like that. But like, now you're saying, wouldn't it ruin it? It only will ruin it if you let it ruin it. The HubSpot has been owned. My podcast. So for the listeners speaking, or the listeners listening, you probably get the sense that like, oh, sometimes Sam says inappropriate stuff, or like is sometimes like a loose cannon.
Couple of bombs now and again.
Yeah, every once in a while. But HubSpot, not one time has ever censored me or told me not to say something, not once. In fact, the founder and CEO, Brian Halligan, says, here's my cell. If anyone censors you, you text me. I want a sign, just like keep Austin weird, keep the hustle weird. And because they committed to that, there hasn't been one time. My journalists are very anti like brands and they're like F the man type of vibe. They're punk rock. And they love it because, first of all, we don't say hateful stuff, like I said. So it's like there's nothing to cancel. But like they let us get away with anything we want. And that's because it's a great partnership. And so if you commit to that honesty, integrity, it works well. And so could it ruin it? 100%. But because us being the hustle and HubSpot, we all have the culture where we're committed to like integrity. It's been cool. So could it be ruined? 100%. Will it be ruined in 10 years? Maybe. It might. It definitely could. But for the last 2 years, it's actually going to be 2 years and 2 weeks. It's been awesome.
I want to get into the actual deal itself. So you're at 12 or 15 trailing, you're on your way to 20. You think the thing could be worth anywhere from 2 to 5 times revenue. What happened? Did they reach out to you? Did you shop it? Like what happened next?
So this was right in the middle of COVID, and I was living in Airbnbs, and I had contracted Lyme disease, and my face got paralyzed, and I had a IV in my arm for a month. I got really sick, and I was like, I can't run this business. Like I'm like, COVID is happening. There's like there's riots and there's protests. I was like, the world's ending. I want security. And then I get an email from HubSpot, and they say, hey, we want to explore partnerships. And I replied, it was this guy named James. I was like, what's up, James? Look, I don't like have time to like you to beat around the bush. Are you trying to buy me or not? Just say yes or no. He said, yes, we are. I go, okay, cool. Here's all the things and reasons why you shouldn't buy us. If you still want to talk, tell me. And he read it and he goes, great. None of these are deal breakers. I go, awesome. Let's talk.
What was it about James's original email that made you believe that he was more interested in an acquisition than a partnership?
I'm pretty sure. Well, because M&A people are always trying to like beat around the bush. And this guy was Australian, and I lived in Australia. Australians are pretty good at like being straight to the point. But let me see if I can find his very first email. It was, here, I have it. I've been a longtime follower of you. Sorry to hear about your recent illness. We're looking at how we could deeply partner with a content how to deeply partner with content business. Would you be interested in having a chat to see if either option would be of interest to you? I know you likely wouldn't be interested in selling, but there might be something deeper we would both be of interest. And I was like, well, that's a little vague. I don't exactly know what that means. So like, tell me a little bit more. And so it was like that. So he was very polite and nice. And then his title was Strategic Partnerships.
Interesting.
So I was like, okay, something's going on. Just tell me what you want, and that way I can just tell you, And so we were interested. Yeah. And so it worked out well.
He definitely used the word deeper twice in one opening email. It sounds like maybe there's something by the use of the word deeper.
Yeah. And HubSpot, during the process, I worked with this woman named Anna, and that was like my kind of connection. And I was like, Anya, I'm not going to bullshit you. You don't bullshit me. And we're going to have a really good relationship. And I'm going to be really honest with you. And I ask that you have that with me and be blunt with me, and I'll do the same. And I want us each, when I text you, I want to reply. And when you text me, I'll reply. So for the next 3 months, we'll be tied at the hip, but we'll make it a really nice relationship. And we were, and they were lovely to work with. So,
okay, back up. James, we have this email. Here's all the great things about the hustle. Here's all the crappy things about the hustle. He responds saying, yeah, none of these are deal breaker. What was on your here's all the crappy things about the hustle list?
It was like, sometimes our CAC is creeping up because Facebook's changing their algorithm. 3 months ago, we had a horrible problem with churn because we made a big mistake. I don't remember everything.
What was the churn mistake out of interest?
We did a giveaway where we gave away a Tesla, and we got like 50,000 subscribers, but a lot of them were crap. And so our churn that month was like stupid high or something like that.
And when you think of churn, you're thinking of churn on the Trends product or churn on the newsletter product?
The newsletter.
Got it.
So just like relatively small things like that, or I think that's it. Things like that, or like maybe like every once in a while we have a month where we'll go down because we scrub our email list and we get rid of all the people who haven't opened in a certain amount of time. Nothing major, things like that.
So you were super transparent up front with James even before you'd gotten into the courting process. Some people are listening to that and saying, wow, like you really got down to brass tacks early.
Well, they're going to find it.
They're going to find it, but at the same time, you didn't have a chance to woo them and amplify their excitement about buying you, so that there was already emotional equity in the deal before you started to reveal some of these less favorable things. I mean, that's what deal theorists would probably say. What would your reaction be to that?
That I'm not good at this. So I'm horrible at negotiating. I'm like the world's worst. My wife has to do it for me. Like, I'm horrible at negotiating. I say yes to everything. So I would say maybe these deal people are correct, but at the same time, I got what I wanted. So I would say I was right. It worked.
What did you want, Sam? Like so you had Lyme's disease, you were in a bad way. You wanted, I think you used the word security.
When I was in my early 20s, my goal was to have at least $20 million in the bank by the age of 30. I made that goal when I was 20 or in the 20s, because some rich guy told me that how much he spent each month, and he thought that $20 million would cover it. And I was like, all right, cool. That's my goal. That's what I wanted.
And did you share that with HubSpot at any point in the process?
Yeah. And that was a mistake.
How did you share it with them? And just give me the context around how it came up.
I don't even remember, but I just talked too much. And I think I got this woman who they had working on the deal with me. I got close to her. We became friends. And sometimes I revealed friend stuff to her as opposed to just adversary stuff. And I don't think that she used it against me, because I think that we were working together to get something done. But like, I ruined some mystery a little bit, probably.
Because you shared this information with her, and that.
Yeah. When they said, like, how much do you want to sell for? I go, oh, these companies usually sell for 3 or 5 times revenue. So what do you think she did? Oh, 3 times revenue. That's the first offer. That was an error. And so I've learned that when it comes to negotiating, and I knew this at the hustle, like when we would negotiate with advertisers, I wasn't allowed to participate. When we had like big meetings, I would come in and like be the mascot and like make people laugh and like, oh, and they would play it up like, oh, this is the prodigy that created the thing, which obviously is not true. But that was like the angle, like, oh, isn't he like a creative genius? Again, not true, but like that was the act. And but then when it came to like brass tacks and like negotiating, I'd be like, I'm gonna see myself out because I'm gonna ruin this for you guys. Like, I just say yes to everything.
Okay, so James, you
like,
shared
when we were negotiating my salary for HubSpot, I had to have my wife in the room and do it for me.
Is that a true story?
Yeah, I swear to God.
Okay, so James sends you this email. You go back and forth. He's like, none of this is deal breaker for us. Where does it go from there?
we get on the phone and we create together a very lightweight preliminary data room. I don't tell anyone. They show it to their board. Their board gives them a stamp of approval. Maybe 3 weeks later, I get a letter of intent. I tell them I don't like that letter of intent.
Why? What was it you didn't like about him?
I wanted a lot of HubSpot stock. So the deal was a lot of cash on signing, and then me personally, I got a lot of HubSpot stock. And I was like, give me more HubSpot stock. I want more. And they did.
Sorry, just to be clear, you wanted more HubSpot. You were willing to take more. Were you willing to give up some of the cash in favor of more HubSpot stock? Or were you like, the cash is fine, but I want more HubSpot stock?
The second one.
Got it. And what
at the
was
time, HubSpot was trading. I think when negotiations happened, I think they were trading the 200s or 300. I forget where exactly. And at the peak, they were trading at 900. So like whenever our deal happened, like 6 months later, it was like a 2 or 3x like difference from when we were negotiating. So like it meaningfully changed.
Mm-hmm. So the cash portion. Sorry, go ahead.
It's changed the other way now. Now it's like right back to where we were. But for a minute, it was like meaningfully different.
Were you able to sell any of your HubSpot stock?
I've not mentioned whether I have or have not.
Okay. Because usually these deals, and again, you can choose to decline.
I'm able to sell HubSpot stock. Starting February 1st, I can sell whenever. Up until February 1st, I could only sell quarterly because I'm an insider.
Got it.
Starting in a minute, I won't be an insider, but previously I was considered an insider, so I could only sell during the sell windows.
Yeah. And for those of you who haven't followed the HubSpot story intimately, like all technology stocks, and it's not unique to HubSpot, there's been a huge run up. And then, of course, with the drop in the NASDAQ, HubSpot's also come down a bit over the last 8 or 9 months. So,
but it's a great company, man. I use HubSpot on all my projects. I didn't really entirely know what they did when they bought us. But it's really well run. The CTO, who's become a great good friend of mine, and the biggest shareholder, Dharmesh, dude, these guys are awesome. HubSpot's awesome. HubSpot, you don't hear a lot of people like me who sold their company to a company will tell you that. But I think HubSpot is a great company. They operate well. The people behind it are talented. And it's like the product just works. At this point, it seems almost hard to screw up because the product is so good. I don't know if anyone else uses HubSpot, but if they raise the prices by a lot, you'd be like, oh, shoot, I have to pay this.
Yeah. So you get the LOI, and it's the cash plus some stock. And how is it contemplating to deal with the original seed round folks? Would they get the same terms you would get, just on a smaller proportion, obviously?
Yeah, they all made a good return, but when people seed invest, they want 10 and 20 times returns, and they weren't getting 10 or 20 times returns, but they were getting good, pretty good, 6, 7 returns in some cases or something like that. And I was caring a lot about what they thought. And then one of my investors was he's this guy named Chris. He's probably close to 70 now, and he's a venture capitalist, but he invested a little bit of money, and he's like, dude, everyone's getting a return, and your life is going to be changed forever, and you're the one doing the work. This is a win-win-win. We're all winning. Just do it. And I was like, all right, cool, because I actually felt very self-conscious about that. I also didn't I gave very little equity to my team because I decided to pay them well instead. And so a lot of my team were making great salaries, and I didn't. And instead, I paid them cash instead of equity. And so it was a little uncomfortable because that was one of the first times. It had always kind of felt like this because I was always the boss, but it was we are not the same anymore. There's an us versus them mentality, and that was very lonely. But I wanted to have security because I had just been married, and I wanted to have children. And I was like, if this business goes away, that's everything I have, and I don't have much to show for it. And I want to be able to very early on my ideal situation was to get rid of the situation of money ever being an issue for my kids and my future kids. I don't have kids, but and my wife and everything, just like make it so like that's not an issue, and I can only focus on like their emotional well-being. And of course, I'm still starting companies, and I'm going to make way more money, I believe, in the future, because that's just what I do. I like starting companies, but I wanted to make it so everything else was just like, you know, a cherry on top.
People listening to this, some of them might be surprised by that, because I mean, it sounds like everything you touch turns to gold. Everything, whether it's the newsletter or the conference business or the trends, I mean, it all sounds very easy is not the right choice of words, but it's coming to mind. And
well,
so
I would say the word simple is the best
simple
word.
Okay. Yeah. So people listening may say, but Sam, you've got the golden touch. Like, why did you still crave this security of the check when clearly you're a young guy and clearly you have the potential to make money in whatever way you choose to make it? It seemed to me like there was never any choice. Like, I'm not at all wondering, will Sam make any more money? No, of course he will, because you have an ability to make money.
I think it was, well, partially it was like logistics. So it's like, so let's just say hypothetically, you're 30 years old. I say, you know, here's $20 million. In order to make $20 million without selling something by the age of 30, you got to make like, I don't even know. You'd have to make like $3 million a year starting at age 21 or something like that, or maybe even more. I don't even. It depends which market you're joining. You know, if you're like 2008 to 2020, then it's like, yeah, your money will grow at like 15% a year. But so it depends on like what the stock market is, and it depends what state you live in. But you have to earn like a significant amount. And 20 million at age 30, theoretically, it's not on pace to do it now. But theoretically, it could become 40 million at 40, which becomes 80 at 50. And like that adds up really quickly. And so I was like, if I could just get that out the way, that would make me feel great. And also on the other side, I think that the same way that I said I was self-conscious, and that's why I raised money, that was probably one of the reasons why I sold too, is because I had fear. Now I'm significantly more confident. I would say I'm potentially more confident because I have some money and I have security, but more so because I've been through it and now I know a little bit more. But you have to realize I had nothing. Like, I moved to San Francisco with $1,000. I had nothing. I used to steal every once in a while from Whole Foods or I would like go shopping there and I would eat 2 slices of pizza while I was shopping because I like didn't have enough money. So like I was like, I'm sick of being poor. I don't want to be poor. And also, what if I'm a one-hit wonder? What if I, don't have it in me? What if I'm not, I was never particularly cool, but like, what if like the audience doesn't think that like my opinion matters anymore? So I think that it was definitely rooted a bit in fear.
What was HubSpot's reaction to your request for more stock? Like, how did they approach your rebuttal on the initial LOI?
They said, okay, let me go talk to them. And they came back and they said, all right, fine, we'll do it.
How much more stock did they give you on a percentage basis?
I made them double it.
And did you give anything up in return? Like, did you just ask, I want more? Or was there anything you were giving up in return for the negotiation?
No, I said, that's not going to cut it. That's why I'm a bad negotiator. I say yes or no.
Doesn't sound like you did terribly badly. Did you...
Like, if they'll say something, I'll be like, no. Not like I won't like woo someone, or if they just say something, I go yes. Like it's either yes or no. That's the only 2 things I have is yes or no.
How did you handle the editorial independence issue of the LOI? You were giving up effectively control by selling to HubSpot. Did they contemplate in the share purchase agreement independence? How much independence you would have?
No, it was just a handshake agreement.
At what point did Brian Halligan give you his cell phone saying, hey, if you ever get censored, call me? Was this before you signed or after?
Maybe 1 or 2 days before or a few days after. I don't remember, but it was like at the end of the line. What interactions did you have with Brian during the negotiation phase? 0. So rather those 2 or 3 or 4 things, like those, I had like a meeting like the day or a couple days before, and then a couple days after, and then we would shoot the shit on Slack. And then 2 weeks later, he got into a really bad snowmobile accident and then resigned as CEO, and that was tragic for him. But he turned out he's fine. But then I became great friends with Dharmesh, the CTO. So Dharmesh is the co-founder. I don't know if you know who Dharmesh is. He originally funded the idea and was the CTO. And he's like, he's a mentor to me for sure. And he's kind of my hero. I really admire Dharmesh, the way that he lives and his outlook on life. And I've become quite close with him. And so I talk to him on a weekly basis.
And how did you structure your role after the sale from, like, you mentioned that you, as an insider, couldn't sell stock other than quarterly. Did you have a holdback on the sale of your stock for a period of time where you couldn't sell?
A year maybe, or 6 months, maybe a couple months. I don't remember. No, maybe maybe I didn't. I don't remember. I didn't sell in the first year.
Got it. Okay.
So I don't even remember. But I had a CEO. I had just hired a CEO, and so he took over the company, and I went straight to podcast host. And so I've been very, very disconnected other than hosting the pod.
How did you approach telling your employees?
I was so afraid. And to be honest, it's still sad because it was like the band is breaking up. We had a very good culture. Our company had a good culture. It was very much like a band. And I was still like a dictator a bit. Like it wasn't like I didn't treat it like family. It's like, dude, if you're not hitting home runs, you're out. So, but like amongst the people who people loved working there because we were really good at being unique and letting people behave how they want to behave. And so they were pretty sad, but they were excited, but they were afraid. Mostly people were afraid when it happened.
How did you handle it? I mean, it was during COVID. Did you get people together physically, or was it on Zoom, or what was it?
It was on Zoom. It sucked. It sucked. Yeah, it was a very anticlimactic feeling, being that it was through COVID.
And just give me the talk track. I mean, was it like, well, we've got a new investor, it's HubSpot, nothing's going to change?
No, you know what happened? It got leaked. It got leaked. Someone leaked it. I have no idea who, but if I ever find out, they are dead to me. I was very angry. And that's a big deal because it's a publicly traded company. So there's like rules and around all that stuff. And their earnings call, I don't quote me on this, but I think we announced it on a Tuesday, and their earnings call was like on a Friday when they were going to announce it, or something like that. Or maybe we were going to announce it as a company on a Wednesday, and their earnings was on a Friday, something like that. And someone leaked it on like a Monday, and so we hurried up and got the company together. And we did a meeting, and we said, "All right, everyone, I've been very secretive these last 3 months, and I'm sorry, but today's the day." We are officially acquired. HubSpot owns us now. And people were like in shock. And it ended up being great. Like a bunch of they all got HubSpot stock and they got paid a ton of money to work there. But there was a lot of fear. And a lot of our original staff is still there. Not all, but a nice amount. And they like it.
You up for a quick lightning round before I let you go?
Yeah.
Awesome. What was the slimiest trick an investor or acquirer ever tried to play on you?
Just like sending an NDA when they're interested, when they're really just wanting to see my data room because they're wanting to buy my competitor. Or another company like wined and dined me. And like they're gonna offer an acqui-hire. It's like, dude, we did like 8 million in revenue last year. What are you, an idiot? You're not gonna acqui-hire me. And they like wined and dined, and like it's like, dude, you just wasted 3 weeks of my life. So that's why I was really upfront with HubSpot early on.
When you say acqui-hire, meaning they wanted to hire you, pay you a salary, and basically get you
just a horrible deal where it's like, what are you, an idiot? No, we won't. No, this is not even a consideration.
Biggest mistake you made personally in the process of selling your company?
I was a horrible negotiator. So saying multiples first.
So you said 3 to 5 times, like companies like us, and then the LOI came in at 3. So you tipped your hand what you were expecting. Yeah.
Something like that. Whatever I said, I don't remember if I said 3 to 5, but it was that scenario.
Yeah. What was the lowest point you reached emotionally during the process?
Dude, every single day, I was like, I'm never selling a company ever again. It was horrible. My wife was like my therapist. I don't know how people are single who do this. I don't drink alcohol and I don't do drugs, but if I did, I would have been drunk the entire time. It is a very emotional period. The founder, Brian, got in a crash 2 weeks later. What happened? What would that have happened? What if it happened 2 weeks prior? Like, everything could have changed. It's horrible. It's a horrible feeling. It's like dating. Like, they say something and you're like, you read the text message and you're like, did she mean like, you're crazy? Or did she mean like, you're crazy? Like, you know, like what it was. So it was awful. You know what I mean?
Trying to read between the lines and read the room and feel the temperature of the deal. And
it sucked. It was awful.
Did it ever feel like it was going to actually die?
Constantly. Yes. All the time. They told me afterwards, they go, it was never going to die, by the way. What? Well, I didn't understand that once a board of a public company signs off on something, the employees can't go to that board and say we failed, because then they will look stupid. And I didn't understand that.
At what point did you learn that the board had signed off on the deal?
Right away. But I'm just a neurotic, crazy person. And I was, emotional the entire time.
What was the highest point you reached emotionally during the process?
The day the wire hit and I knew it was done.
Where were you? Describe it. Are you refreshing your phone with your wife at home, or were you at the office?
Just sitting at my kitchen table. Yeah. And we didn't do anything with the money. I bought a car. I bought $100,000 car.
What'd you buy?
A Mercedes E63, an AMG E63 station wagon. It's like a really rare Mercedes that I always wanted.
Yeah, Sportback, right? Is that the... Yeah.
It's like the fastest Mercedes you can get. And I bought that for $109,000, and that was the only thing I bought.
What was it about that car that was important to you?
I grew up with my dad having the non-fancy one, and so I wanted to up him and get the fanciest one you could get.
What's your relationship like with your dad today?
It's on, you know, I'm still trying to figure out how to do it. So I grew up in Missouri, pretty normal family. And when you achieve interesting things at a relatively young age, particularly things that are really public, like this was in the Wall Street Journal and things like that, I had to figure out, how do I not get taken advantage of? How do I still show love to people without them thinking that I'm better than them, without actually having to think that I'm better than them? And it definitely creates an us versus them, because I remember when I sold my company, my parents go, okay, that's cool, but do you still have health insurance? And I was like, you guys, like, that's not like the thing. I could just pay the hospital bill. I'm like, that's not that, you know, my health insurance is not really much of a factor here. And they're like, okay, well, like, are you still going to have a job? And so, like, figuring out like who I can talk to, and like before I sold, I was very transparent with them about everything. Now I'm purposely not as transparent because I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. Like before, if I did something fancy, I would like take a picture of it and like, oh my God, this conference flew me out first class. You know what I'm saying? Now I don't even like mention anything because I don't want to make people ever feel uncomfortable. And so things have changed a little bit. And you also have to be a bit more guarded. You can't let people take advantage of you.
What would you advise entrepreneurs who are going through a life-changing exit on to do or not do in the months following the check clearing their bank account?
I would say do basically nothing. Don't invest in anything. I bought bonds and total Vanguard index fund. I mean, it's basically the only thing I own, that and Airbnb and HubSpot, because my wife has worked at Airbnb forever. I would say don't do anything. Just pretend it's not real. Maybe like take like 1% of the money, and that's your fun money. And like you can get yourself a gift and celebrate it. Maybe take a trip, but like make it all, well, I don't know what 1% would be, but like a relatively small amount where it's like a rounding error. Take that and just be reckless if you want. But besides that, put the rest away and pretend it doesn't exist and normalize it. And after 1 year, then make decisions. Every opportunity that you have today, it's going to be there in 15 months. There's always going to be some startup that wants money. the market, you may or may not miss it, but like whatever, you're going to miss 20%. I think it's worth it to not make silly decisions. So I would say mostly do nothing. I think that's kind of the best advice I got. I mostly did nothing, but I did a few things. I invested in some real estate deals that ended up making money. But looking back, I was like, what was that? Why would I do that? I didn't even know anything about this thing. So I would say do nothing other than like a one splurge.
Nice.
Is that the what you tell people?
I'm a big fan of having a trophy, right? So it sounds like your AMG is that trophy, right? Something to commemorate the win, something you can physically touch and feel. And there's,
you know what the best part about that trophy is?
What's that?
It means nothing. The shit that you want, the stuff, the items that you want, you get them, you drive in them, you wear them, and then you're like, most of the time people say, okay, but what's the better version of what I have? And then you're like, wait a minute, this is what I wanted forever. Therefore, this is worthless. It means nothing. So it's fun just to get it out of your system, if you ask me.
Yeah. I'm a believer in something physical, and it doesn't have to be expensive, but just something to commemorate the win that you can kind of touch and feel. Is there anyone or anything you did to educate yourself about the process of selling a company? Like, for example, it sounds like you talked to Chris, the VC who invested in the original angel round.
I talk to people a lot.
Talk to people. Like anyone in particular that you could point people to that's more public that might be helpful for folks going through this for the first time?
I talked to my friend Dave Nemetz. Dave Nemetz started Bleacher Report. He sold that for like $200 or $300 million. My friend Joe Spicer, who's now my business partner, he sold a company for $300 million. He's on Twitter, Joseph Spicer, Speiser. He's sold a few companies, and he guided me a whole lot. Who else did I talk to? I just read a ton of like Quora blog posts about like, is this normal? Is it normal to feel like depressed? Is it normal? I was just like, I read lots of that stuff, like Quora and Twitter and things like that. I also read tons of biographies.
Anyone in particular that you could point us to?
The Patriarch, the story of Joseph Kennedy. That one kind of helped me because he was kind of a piece of crap, but he also had like a tragic life. And sometimes reading about entrepreneurs going through harder circumstances than me kind of made me feel better about myself.
That's a great tip. We'll put that in the show notes at buildtosell.com. Sam, if people want to reach out to you, I know you've got an amazing show, Twitter following. Like, where's the best folks to find? Where's the best place for folks to find you?
You can find me on Twitter. It's the Sam Parr. I'm on Instagram, the Sam Parr. And then the name of my podcast that HubSpot now owns, it's called My First Million. And then we have a YouTube channel called My First Million that we ask everyone to subscribe to.
Awesome. And we'll put all those in the show notes at buildtosell.com. Sam, thanks for doing this.
Thank you.